Several viewers have asked me, how do you get your money back from the Philippines to the US? All along, I'm talking about how to send money to the Philippines. But their question is, well, when you're done with your business in the Philippines and you want to go back to the US, how do you get your money out of the Philippines? That's what we'll talk about. Stay with me. I will be less than honest if I tell you that I have already done this. I have not. But to be honest, before I bought my condominium in the Philippines, I did some investigation to the extent that I can. So I asked two banks, how do I get my money out? What are the requirements? Is there a monetary limit? When I left the Philippines some 50 years ago, you cannot pull money in excess of $10,000 without special permission, so it's not that easy. But my understanding, based on my conversation with these two banks, is that the only requirement is that you are able to prove where the money came from, and if it is from the sale of real estate, to show proof that a capital gains tax has already been paid. That's it. Then they should be able to send dollars back to the United States, to your bank account in the US. Now, let's give us an example that you bought a property for 800,000 pesos. Then after so many years, you sold it for 1 million pesos. And I'm talking about whether it's a condominium or house and lot. You will have to prove that taxes have already been paid. Now, first of all, let's talk about how taxes are assessed in the Philippines. In the United States, and maybe in some other countries, if you sold something for 1 million and you bought it only for 800,000, you have a 200,000 capital gain, right? And the capital gain could be short-term or long-term. Well, in the Philippines, it's a lot simpler. Capital gains tax, although it's called capital gain, is applied on the total sales proceeds, in this case, 1 million. You pay the tax on 1 million, and it's not relevant how much you paid for it. So even though in the example I gave you, you only made 200,000, you are paying tax on the 1 million. Just like sales tax or value-added tax. It's based on the value of the transaction. Now, it's too bad if you sold your house at a loss, meaning at less than the money that you paid for it, because in spite of a loss, you still have to pay the capital gains tax. Now, having said that, technically, and there's a lot of arguments I hear back and forth, no, it's the buyer who pays capital gain, it's the seller who pays capital gain. Well, who sold the property and will be subject to tax is the seller. So technically, it's the seller. But you could always have an agreement wherein you will say the buyer will take the responsibility of paying for it. What is the difference? The difference is this. For a title to be transferred over to the new owner, you have to present the receipt that you paid the capital gains tax. So, from the perspective of the buyer, it will be better for him to take the responsibility of paying for it. Meaning, let's build the tax to be paid into the selling price of the house. Doesn't matter how you come up with the number. But it's better for the buyer to pay for the capital gains tax himself. Why? That will make sure that he will be able to transfer the property. What if the seller is the one who is responsible for paying for it and did not pay for it? You cannot move the title over in your name. Now, from the seller's perspective, let's say you're coming from the US, it's better if you can find a buyer in the US or in another foreign land if you're able to sell the property in US dollar denomination, not in peso denomination. Now, then you just sign the paperwork and let them take care of the rest. Let them pay for the property tax. You have your money and you don't have to deal with the bank in the Philippines. That's how I would approach it if I can. But I'll be honest with you, I have not done it yet, although I've heard someone, a relative of mine, who sold their condominium in the Philippines using a Florida-based real estate company. So I'm going to investigate how he or she found that real estate company, get the name, inquire as to how the transaction is done, how the documents are done. But if you have no choice and you have to sell it to a Filipino buyer, meaning resident in the Philippines, then you have to go through the process. And the reason I want to avoid going through the process is Philippines is so slow. Yeah, I may be able to get the money out of the Philippines, but it may take so long. They might say, oh, gee, I need signature here, signature there. Oh, I need your photograph, I need this and that. And that's what I'm trying to avoid. So if I can bypass dealing with a bank in the Philippines, I will. Now, it could, I don't know if it could present a problem if, well, not too many people can afford to buy cash for real estate, and therefore they may have to go through bank financing, and I don't know if that presents another special problem. I don't know. I will approach it when that time comes, but it's important to note that taxes is based on value on the total value of the transaction, meaning like value added tax or sales tax, even though it's called capital gains. It is the responsibility of the person selling to make sure that taxes are paid. And guess what? If I delegate that responsibility to the buyer will pay for it because he wants the title to the property to be transferred over to him or her. So it will be safe for the buyer to do that too. Now, the only problem is, will the buyer be willing to pay you in advance of you giving the title over to them? And I don't know how that is done, because here in the United States, we have title insurance companies who will take care of getting all the money and transferring all at the same time simultaneously. But I never heard, I could be wrong, put down in the comment section if you're aware of title insurance companies in the Philippines. Now, it's possible that you can use the lawyer as an escrow agent. That's a possibility too. If there's a lawyer you can trust to handle the monetary transaction. So, I wish I already have this experience, but I have not. But I did some research before I plunged into buying a condominium in the Philippines, because that's a lot of money you send to the Philippines and you want to make sure that you'll be able to get it out. So, that is the only experience I have, which is a research and inquiries. And actual transaction, I don't know. If you have had actual transaction, especially if you were able to sell it in the US, and you have a realtor in the US who was able to handle the transaction successfully, I'll appreciate it if you can share that information in the comment section down below. I hope this information is useful to you as it is to me, and I will appreciate it if you click like and do subscribe to my channel unless you have already done so. Make it a great day. God bless.